My name is Edmar Kok. I'm representing DUO, which probably most of the Dutch attendees know. Its organization. It provides loans and funds to students in the Netherlands, and also provides funds for schools and universities. Those are the main goals, but DUO does a lot of things more, but I will not get in depth with that. One of the things what I'm going to present today to you is how we're using process mining in an event-driven environment, and especially to monitor key performance indicators. By the way, this is a new building, very nice. Beautiful view on the 24th of the floor. It's in Groningen, up to the north of the Netherlands. DUO, like most of agencies and governmental organizations in the Netherlands, have to face some massive cost reductions. And typically, the processes at DUO were based on craftsmanship, which is part on the left side. Typically, craftsmanship processes are characterized by a lot of variations, a lot of expertise, specialist works, and it costs time, and we had to reduce that time. So the first and the main goal was to invent a new system at DUO, and it's an event-driven architecture system. And well, it looks a bit like that. And I will explain why it is like bottles. Event-driven systems are, well, you can present a very technical presentation. I will try to get it in, like, say, more like an easier way of explanation. If you look at a system, and there has to be work done, and you can look at it as a system or a person gets work out of an inbox tray. It does things, you do things, and when you're ready, typically you put it into an output tray. That's basically the whole thing you are doing. When you're ready, you should say, well, I'm ready, I hand it over, and you hope that somebody will take it over from you. That's the process, basically. So it looks like an estafette. And because event-driven environments are massive, you produce a lot of events, we would like to have these events in some sort of event log. And we want to use, of course, this event log. Again, these are massive environments. 100 million of events could easily be processed in near time. So how can we get this massive logging into an event log, and how can we use that event log in a process mining experience? When we were starting with process mining at DUO with this particular system, we were facing with the way how the event-driven environment is logging the events. Events are just parts of work that happen in the system. The first thing is what you will see is it produces a line, an event log line, and typically you will find some information about the event. When the business service is ready with the task, it will publish an event log record telling it's ready. And after that, he had to send it to the next queue. These are queues, basically. The in-trace I showed you on the other sheet. So, it's there in the queue, and the next application, the next business service takes it over, and it produces, again, the same lines of event logging. And so on, and so on. Of course, this is a very simple way of processing. Of course, you can have a massive, you can have multi-processing events. So you have a very complex situation, typically in event-driven architecture. When this system was designed, it was typically an IT project. The business teams were not quite involved in designing. So it was typically an IT party, I would say. The interesting thing is that the business had to maintain the system, of course, and they had to be sure that these goals of decreasing costs and all these other enhancements would be enabled in a new situation. When we were asked as a project team, we were trying to think about and help the business how to create their own KPIs out of this new system. And remember, this system is an automatic system, so the IT department could not really see what was happening inside this system. So we were starting to help them think about some KPIs, and here are some examples of these KPIs. And another very interesting thing was that not only these KPIs were very good to help them think about their process, because they could not see their process, because it was all automated, we could help them to learning on the job. And that's where process mining came in. There was some challenge for the project team. This was basically the first big question inside Duo for a very massive project to help. We had done some experience in another project, and we were trying to use those lessons learned into a project approach. And we started to think about a project step as 10 steps. And we need, of course, some people executing those steps. And there was also this gap between IT and business. So this was a quite interesting environment to start with this project. Well, first things first, we had to do some pre-processing. You heard it before today. Process mining consists of a lot of pre-processing of data. You have to find your data. Well, there was enough data, tons of data, event log data, but we were finding out that this format of the here it is. The format of the event log was not quite suitable for what we wanted to do with process mining, especially for KPIs. So what we were doing was trying to create a process log layout. Well, typically you will find some things like this, all quite familiar: resources, activities, event names, an action field, and of course a unique identifier, track and trace ID. Track and trace ID is something which is unique during the whole process. Of course, in these events, we found a lot of technical stuff, like application codings or application names, event names, typically IT-based names. And we converted them to more meaningful things in business terms. So that was the easy part. And of course, you would look like things like this. As you have seen before in the way we build up the event log, you will see start consumptions, you see publish events, and you see end consumption events. The first thing we want to do was to combine the start consumption events with the end consumption events. And to do that, of course, you are looking for the things you need to combine. We took the date and timestamp of each event and put it in a new record in the process log. So we were actually creating a new process log based on an event log which was still there. Also, we have an extra field, an action field, containing some specific information on what happened exactly in this environment. Again, we added this information. The same thing about with the publish events. We created publish activities based on the publish events. It's quite about the same. Of course, looking for the publication event, looking for the timestamps. In this case, we use the same timestamps. And in this case, we're trying to look for an action which is inside the sequence of the start consumption and the end consumption. Typically, there must be a public event in the same sequence. We use this sequence in the action field. There was another thing which we found out. Events can be there and not processed correctly. So it might be possible that there are some starting consumptions which are not followed by an end consumptions belonging to it. So what we found out that, or what we discussed was that how many times should there be a start consumption before is there an error to occur. So what we did was looking for 3 lines of start consumptions and produced 1 process log line telling there was an error in a specific situation. And what we did was adding the time, the ends, and the start and the end time stamp in the log file. Again, an action was added telling that there was an error occurred in this specific situation. Like the other one, like the publish events, we also created something which we are called processed activities, where in both cases they combine the first action and the next action together. So basically we're doing here the same. We take the date stamps and timestamps, looking for, in this case, the start consumption, the publication, which is in the former activity, and create an action field with the process log. This looks like a lot of work to produce a process log, by the way. And this has to be done very carefully, of course, because we are creating a new process log, and with this process log, we are doing our process mining activities. I think you heard it before in other speakers. You have to do a lot of preparation of your process data, and it has to be very secure. We did it with a special program. This is a program which does all these actions, and the business can run this program by itself. And typically they do that every week or every day, depending on the KPI situation. Right, well, then we have this process log, and you, of course, will get familiar maps like this. And this doesn't look so complex, by the way. You see, we have some quite interesting figures here. 1 million cases, 3 million events. Not that much activities, by the way. That makes sense because we have a very lean process log. There's not much data in it. But we have to do some preparation in Disco itself, because we know that in this process log there is not only the events of the requesting, the student's requesting process, but there is also a payment process, which does basically or uses the same event-driven architecture. So in this event there are other processes as well. So we had to filter that process out. So what we then have to do is do some filtering, of course. I haven't heard and haven't seen other speakers using the recipes in Disco. I can advise to use them. It's quite handy. It's especially good when you have to do a lot of work at the same time. And basically what we do is we produce a recipe for each KPI. So for instance, if we want to measure the straight-through processing rate, we create a recipe special for this purpose only. Well, like I said, we first have to filter the target group. So we have to look for the students in the specific process for getting loans. And we know, because we asked the business where this process starts, and we're using that name to find it in Disco. So that's easy. When you find this process step, you can easily say in the filter, I think it's, I can't even remember what it was, but you can easily say to Disco what you want to exclude and include in your process. That's quite easy. So they have a new process map. When I show this process map to the business, they said, oh, wow, wait a minute, we can imagine what is happening here. Yes, we can recognize our process now. But like I said, if you want to find, in this case, the KPI for straight-through processing, so no manual activities involved, you have to exclude, you have to filter out your manual activities. And that's easy, because you know where they are, and you can filter them out. And what you now see is that we get some lower rates here. And of course, you can also see what happens here. So what we now have here is a filter recipe telling the business that they had about 400 cases and 225 are straight-through processed. So this is the first KPI we could easily show and make in Disco. Well, don't forget to save the recipe. I've noticed that there are some things you have to know about using recipes. That has something to do with how I think the recipe is stored at your system. I have to ask Fluxicon about it, how it exactly works. But we found some things we have to check out. So, then you have some KPIs, outcomes, and which you can discuss with your business teams, of course. And of course, this is more typically stuff. Another one is what we try to find out is what the speed of this STP process was. We asked the business team for a specific KPI, and well, they said, well, we don't know exactly because the system is new, so how can we tell you how fast it should work? The first guess is sometimes the best. They said, use 6 seconds, try to find it out. We used the 6 seconds, and whoops, we found out that it was about 10 seconds in this time frame. So it wasn't that bad at all. Again, this KPI helped the business to understand their process. They had a gut feeling how it should work, but they weren't quite sure how it worked, and they were not quite sure, they couldn't see how it worked in their system. Well, of course, there are other beautiful things and filters in Disco you can use for other KPIs. In this case, we wanted to see if those process logs for this specific process, if there was what the amount of, oops, here it is, how the setup was when you look at the 6 seconds time frame. Well, as I told you, these KPIs were used for helping the business understand their process. And that's about what they do at this moment. They have these KPIs, they have these recipes. They can run these recipes on a weekly basis. And they report on these KPIs. So, where's then the 10th step? And this is this plan, do, check, act life cycle. And I advise the business team, well, you have a lot of information. You know about these KPIs, how they work. You can do a lot of things with it. Try to enhance your processes, enhance your feeling about the system. And probably you all know this kind of diagrams in Disco. But the business is not ready yet for this moment. This new system is really giving them some new inside information, and they have to reprocess this all. It's quite interesting. I want to skip to some lessons learned, giving time frames. The first one is a lean process log versus an event log with all kinds of attributes. At Duo, we decided to use a very lean process log, just basically to use for KPIs and for performance indicators. Is it then a process? Is it then a business process or is it an IT process? This is something this is very interesting discussion, this one. Business will tell you, no, we're looking at an IT process, and IT person will say, no, we're looking at a business process. This is very quite interesting discussions. The third one is can you use process mining to discover processes in EDI? Well, you can do it, but again, you have to be sure that you have to get the right information again. You have to look for the right data, and you have to do some process, some pre-processing to get the right information into your process. What we also discovered was that this tool we created to get the process log, to process the process log, was quite complex. And is it worth to use a program for just this purpose? Again, this is a learning thing. They are in the learning phase, and this helped the business to understand their process. And yes, process mining is not a reporting tool, but it helps. Again, it helps. And actually, they are now working on some business dashboards. So the knowledge of these KPIs, they can transform into these dashboards and use these dashboards on a weekly or daily basis. So they don't have to do the process mining activities. The other one is another part for Duo. They are using process mining also for customer journey mining. That's another story, by the way. But also, in that area, the business is doing some very good experience with. Right, well, this is my story.
Any questions from the audience? So I'm curious whether any one of you has an event-driven architecture as well. If you have, please let us know. There's a question up there. Or wait.
Yeah, hi. My question was that you just mentioned management dashboards, which actually don't need then process mining because they're just relying on the data which is produced by process mining. For that example, how do you get the output from the Disco tool? Like this KPIs, it is 80%. It is less than 10 seconds or something of that sort. Mm-hmm. So it can actually you can download this or something and then transform it in this dashboard.
Well, At this moment, we are having this process log, which is basically separated from our data warehouse. And the dashboard solutions we have is working on the data warehouse environment. And we're now working on a process to get the process log into a database in the data warehouse so we can combine it with the dashboards. And there are some things we cannot do with the dashboards. This has to do with timing and the complex event processing, the sequence of both. Again, we don't want to have a lot of code in these dashboards. So we have to figure that out. That's right. Yeah. Does it say yours? Yeah.
More questions for Edmar?
Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to know what is different with the event-driven architecture and other business process management tools.
Yeah, at Geo we don't use business process management tools. When the project started, they were really looking at BPMs, like an orchestration engine, which was telling how the work should go and flow in the organization. But we found out that that was not flexible enough for the system or for the process requirements. So in the very early stage, they decided to go to an event-driven environment and not to a business process management solution. Does it answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe one quick follow-up question. The way you explained it, also it's a new system development, right? And it was, if I remember correctly, it was also developed in phases. The first phase was just technical tests, is everything working correctly? Yep. Then the next phase is the first pilot group, so not everyone is immediately going to the new system. Mm-hmm. Yeah, first it's tested on a certain part. Can you maybe say quickly what the status is? Is now everyone using this event-driven system and the analysis based on that, or is it still, in the middle of rollout at the moment?
Well, not really for the student finance domain. I think they will continue to use it, and event-driven solutions are designed in other locations and do as well. But the solution EDI for this particular process is, well, typically, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to take it out and put it on another process very easily. No.
Okay, well, one last question.
I was wondering, is there any... You explained this sort of general monitoring and getting to know the process exercise. But apart from that, is there anything specific you were looking for in that event-driven stuff? Or alternatively, have you found anything?
No, like I explained before, we are not there yet to discover. It's more like finding the KPIs. And that's a struggle already, I found out. So just to take the next step to make business improvement or improvement of the process, well, that's the next step.
Maybe one addition, just for you, for the talk. So as you have seen, there are some specifics in the way the data needs to be prepared based on the way the data is collected. I'm not sure.
That crunching, the transformation of event log to process log.
Yeah. That was the specifics of the, and that's not so easy because it's quite loosely coupled, right?
That's right, it's loosely coupled. By the way, what you have seen is that we create a process log again beside the event log. So the event log still exists, and we produce a new process log. And the process log tends to grow because we create not only records for the consumption, but also for the publication and the process. So this was also the reason why you saw this immense or this large amount of events, because we produced extra events. So you have to be very keen in this situation if you are building a recipe, that you filter the right type of events, like a start consumption or a consumption or a publication or whatever you are looking for. So especially those published and processed events in the process log, we want to use to create a new view on the process, so you can create other process maps. We are not ready that far. We are only using consumption events at this moment. So.
Okay, thanks a lot, Edmar. Let's give him another round of applause.